Hi, friends. My name is Colby Sharp. I am a fifth grade teacher in Michigan, and welcome to the latest episode of Partially Proficient. Usually, my wife is sitting right here next to me, but she fell asleep because it's been a very long week, as many of you, I'm sure, can imagine. So, thankfully, we have a guest today. We have Caldecott Medal winning author Matthew Cordell. He's going to be joining me, and I'm going to pull him in here in a second. But Alaina wanted you to know that she is sorry. The entire family, 5 kids and my wife, were all asleep by like 7:10. So a lot of very, very tired people. So we're going to bring Matthew in now, and he's going to have some fun, hopefully, talking with me today. Mr. Cordell, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you, Colby?
I am amazing. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Oh yeah, my pleasure.
Usually my wife is with me, but as you can imagine, this has been a pretty crazy week here in the United States, and
Yeah,
the entire family was passed out by 7 o'clock my time, which I know we're a little hour past. So
yeah. This is a late event for me as well. I'm used to doing like daytime or right now my son is in the bathtub. My wife is giving him a bath, and my daughter will be going into the bath after.
Okay.
So this is like this is the witching hour of our house.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. I know that a lot of that evening family time is pretty sacred. So thanks for giving me a few minutes tonight.
Yeah,
it means a
my
lot.
pleasure.
So usually when my wife and I are together, we kind of break it into this chat into 4 things where we kind of reflect on our week, and then we have like a big topic. And the big topic is going to be you. It's going to be your book. It's going to be World Kindness Day, which is coming, I believe, this coming Friday.
That's right. Yeah.
Friday the 13th. Nice.
Yes.
So always an adventure in the classroom. I guess, Matthew, we'll just start with the positive. What was something positive from your week, this past week?
Oh, I mean, I don't want to be too political, obviously, but it was extremely pleasant when Joe Biden and Kamala Harris won the president and vice president election after a long, grueling up and down week. It was pretty wild, and all of my family was really invested in it. You know, even my 12-year-old daughter is really she's really gotten into politics, and she's just joined the debate club this year. So I mean, I know there's a lot of people out there that probably weren't happy, I guess. I have family members as well that are not happy, but personally speaking, I feel like it's the best thing that's happened in a really long time. So I was really excited about that. That big helping of positivity that came in through the news. How about you?
Yeah, well, I actually want to follow up on that. That's going to be mine too. But I want to know, Matthew, when you look back at this past week, what do you think? What it will be the one memory that you look back at when you think about this past week? You think about the election. You think about all the things that went on, how you consumed it media-wise. Like, what moment do you think you'll remember the most?
Yeah, I will definitely remember, and it's related to the election. I was on Saturday morning. I was doing a podcast, a Mr. Rogers podcast, and I was in my studio, and it was right near the end. And you never know. I mean, I try to be diplomatic about politics. I don't just like to assume everyone's thinking the same thing. So I didn't know too well the person I was speaking with on this podcast. But Julie, my wife, and my 2 kids came in with a piece of paper that said Biden won on it, written on the paper while I was talking to this man. And it was incredible. I still have that piece of paper in my studio. I have it hanging up now. but it was really special to find out that way, and to find out, while I was talking about Mr. Rogers as well, to someone else who loves Mr. Rogers. So yeah, that's definitely I'm gonna remember that for a long time.
That's awesome. I was running, and I got back, and of course, like I did way too many times this past week, I checked my phone immediately. I actually stopped halfway through my run to check my phone. It's getting bad. Too much screen time this past week.
Yeah.
And I can remember just like I just put my hands over my mouth, and I just stood there, and then I rushed into the house and actually found my wife, who managed to not watch anything or read anything about it. She actually just kept going to bed as early as she could. She's couldn't handle it, I guess, is kind of
it was stressful.
And I found her on the floor just bawling, just so happy. And that was pretty special. And then when my daughter's finding out was magical. I have a 7th and a 5th grade daughter, and I can still remember 4 years ago. I think it's actually 4 years ago tomorrow, when she came down in the morning afterwards, and I had to tell her. She asked, and I remember her just being, how can someone so angry and mean win? And I just held her, and she just cried and cried. And so that was really fun. She ran around the block. We did victory laps, and we ran around the block.
Yeah.
It was interesting. So definitely one of those weeks that I think we'll remember for forever. And
definitely,
so
absolutely.
You have a 12-year-old daughter. Is your son in school?
Yeah, he's in the 2nd grade. He's 7.
So what does school look like where you are right now?
We have been, so it's I live in the suburbs of Chicago, a town called Gurnee. It's just about an hour north of Chicago. And here in Gurnee, our district has been just knocking it out of the park with handling this COVID situation. They have just been so thoughtful about everything. We've just been so grateful because, we hear from friends in different parts of the country, and it's really scary at times because there's not a lot of planning that goes into it, or not as much. And then it ends up, people start getting sick. But our district has been completely virtual since the school year started, and it will be so until the end of January, I believe it is. And so both of our kids are home at school, which it's challenging, because I work from home as well, and my wife does too. But it's the best thing for us. I know it's difficult. It's got to be difficult for a lot of families who can't handle their kids being at home, and I'm not sure how people deal with that. And my heart goes out to those families. But in our case, it's really just the perfect scenario, because we didn't want our kids to go back to school until they absolutely had to, and until this thing is under control. So both our kids are at home, and our son, being the younger one, we were a little worried that it would be difficult for him to stay engaged, but he's really loved it. I think he's going to have a hard time getting back into the classroom, and getting up. He has to get up a lot earlier than he does right now. And my daughter, being in 6th grade, she's getting more and more independent. So she's done really well too. That's awesome. So we've gotten lucky with the whole thing, thankfully.
Yeah, it's nice to have a long-term plan kind of figured out. I bet that's at least that's helpful to parents. Matthew, we started with a hybrid model. So I have 29 students, and 19 are learning in class and 10 are learning at home.
Right.
And our kids are staying home, except for our kindergartner. We didn't have a choice, it felt like. So our kindergartner is coming to school, but I actually have a 5th grade daughter who's in my class, but learning from home. So it's kind of weird.
That's interesting. I like that.
Yeah, the kids are very like, why isn't your kid here? And I'm like, just thought it would be safer for everyone if there's one less kid. But we actually had a situation where we had to close for 2 weeks, where the cases kind of spiked up. Oh,
wow. Right. Yeah.
We went back last Thursday, and I don't know, it doesn't feel good. Like all of the districts around us are closing again, and
Oh yeah.
it's a tough time here in Michigan, which I'm sure it is in Illinois as well. So
Yeah.
we're hanging in there.
Yep.
One thing, Matthew, from your week, part two, that didn't go so great, or a tough thing for you.
Let me think. I had a really good week. I
Good,
mean,
and that's okay.
I finished a book this week, my first
Nice,
book that I've had to deliver in the pandemic.
nice.
And so I was really excited about that. I had a lot of good family time. I think the one bad thing about this week is I was so busy. So I've turned into like a pretty big birder.
I've seen that on Instagram and
Oh
things.
yeah, cool.
Yes.
I love going out into nature every morning. I have been doing that for a long time, but I hadn't really been digging too deep in terms of nature specifics, So I don't know what it was. I think I ended up starting to see in the spring. I started to see more and more different types of birds, and it just made me start wondering what is this bird, what is that bird. So I started whole conversations with other people online, other friends that are birders. So this week I didn't get to do really much birding just because I was so busy, but I like to try to go out at least 2 or 3 times a week and see what I can see. But this week, yeah, I guess that was the one bad thing between the late nights and not being able to sleep, and also just trying to finish that book. I didn't get a whole lot of that. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, with the birding, this is going to be, I don't know, I'm guessing you're having similar weather. Like, this is going to be an amazing week of weather here in the Midwest.
Yeah, it seems like it. Yeah, it's warm here right now.
So hopefully, now are you noticing? So I know nothing about birds, so these might be terrible questions. Are like you getting like birds migrating? Do you feel like you're seeing new birds, or are your favorites
There's
leaving?
there was more of a migration happening, I think probably about 3 weeks ago or so. Right now it's just kind of like whatever birds haven't left the area or are going to stay through the winter. There's definitely not as many as there were, a month ago or a month and a half ago. So it's gotten a lot quieter, and so I go to a bunch of different preserves. I try to mix it up, forest preserves, and most of them now are pretty quiet. There's one that I go to that still has a nice sort of range of shorebirds, water birds, and few others. So.
Do you see this hobby kind of crossing paths with your career, or do you want to keep them separate, or what are your thoughts? I know it's still, I guess, early, so
Yeah,
what are your thoughts?
I would love to. It's definitely inspired me to want to make a picture book about birds in some way. I did recently just sign up to illustrate a picture book about migration written by Angela Dieterlisi,
Okay.
which I'm really excited about. It won't be for a couple years, basically, but that's how these things work.
Yeah.
But so I'm excited about that. Super excited. It's really a terrific manuscript by Angela, and but I've been trying to find a way in to write something myself. I've gotten really into nonfiction lately, so I was trying to think of maybe a different type of person, or historically speaking, somebody that I looked into John James Audubon, because of the Audubon Society, and apparently he's not a very good he's not going to be a very good person to write about for a picture book. Very controversial figure, and a bit of a strange past, so I'll have to keep digging around.
Now, do you find yourself, when you say interested in nonfiction, like in your reading life, in your television viewing, in
right. Yeah, definitely. Well, in my yeah, I've been reading more nonfiction, I think, but and I've always loved documentaries, but I was more so speaking to making nonfiction books.
Okay.
Starting with Hello Neighbor was my first nonfiction book that I've either written or illustrated, And the book I just finished this week is also nonfiction. It's written by Candace Fleming, who is really wonderful author, known, really well known for her work in nonfiction. So I'm excited about that. And so yeah, I've gotten, I was used to be intimidated by the idea of doing nonfiction because I hadn't done it, but now that I've got a taste of it, I've been really surprised by how much I've loved it. And the research was always the intimidating part for me, because it was something I just kept thinking of, like, in the college days, having to do like these really these really boring research assignments and stuff, and I never really enjoyed that. But this is obviously a very different situation, which I don't know why I got so hung up on that for so long, but I love doing the research now. It's a lot of fun.
Those bad school assignments stick with you forever, right?
Yeah, a lot of late night typing term papers, and that stuff was kind of killed it for me for a while.
So let's transition to Hello Neighbor. For the people who may not be familiar with your I guess latest book, your first nonfiction book, tell us a little bit about it.
So Hello Neighbor has been sort of a dream project of mine for many years. I was born in 1975, and I was in a preschool age at a very, peak point of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. It was really like going strong in those years. And so I grew up with Mr. Rogers and loved Mr. Rogers. And then, I had this period of living where I didn't really think about Mr. Rogers that much, other than just sort of nostalgia, happy memories or whatever. He wasn't really on my mind that much. And then when I became a dad myself, my daughter was born in 2008. When she was just old enough to watch television, about 2 years old or so, is when we started watching, different PBS programs with her. We had the TV on one afternoon, and on PBS, we weren't really watching it, and Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood episode came on, and we were in the other room, and I heard the music, and that music is so it's something you never forget. It's the sound of it, but it really got. I could hear it from the other room, and it just it was almost like like the Pied Piper or something. It really pulled me into the room. In part because it was just, again, that nostalgia, that lure of nostalgia, but just hearing it again was just so surprising, because this was 2010, so it would have been 2010. There wasn't a lot of talk about Mr. Rogers 10 years ago, not like there is now. I feel like there's been this kind of resurgence of Mr. Rogers right now, but there wasn't a lot going on with Mr. Rogers, and his the program wasn't really on most PBS affiliates at that time. So the whole thing was pretty surprising. So I went in and watched it with Romy, and I just remember being affected in a way that I didn't expect it to be. I just thought I would remember it, and it would be this cute, sweet moment, but it was so mind-blowing in many ways, which just took me by surprise, how sincere and kind and curious and loving and selfless and just tolerant and accepting. It was just these incredible gestures where you don't find these things happening all in one place. It was just really complex and it's simple at the same time. And so I started watching it at that time every afternoon, with or without my daughter.
I was going to ask if you're watching it by yourself ever.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of it was at a time in my life too when I was sometimes I was a stay-at-home dad, also working from home, just the two of us, and it can get kind of lonely at times, to be in that place. And when your child is napping along stretches of the day, and it was it was kind of became this kind of comfort, you know, it was this comforting part of my day. And I got to where I'd watched so many episodes, and you know, with most television, people, a television program like that, a person is not going to be the character that they play, you know, the actor
Yeah.
that plays that part. But I was curious, you know, is Mr. Rogers, is Fred Rogers, you know, how different is he from Mr. Rogers? So at that, a little bit later, I started to dig around and find, you know, interviews that he'd done, or documentaries, or you know, whatever nonfiction writing there was about his life. And it didn't take long to discover that Fred Rogers was pretty much Mr. Rogers. They were pretty
Mhm.
much the same person. And you know, Mr. Rogers, I was just so floored by the man that he was, that it floored me again to find out that Fred Rogers was just the same, if not more. I mean, he did so many things in his personal life that that you never would have known about just from watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, that made me love him even more. So at that point, I just felt like I need to I need to make this man's life into a picture book. You know, that's the way that I share um, my love for something to the world, and I wanted to make something that showed how much I love Fred Rogers, and I want to share it with families that might not be familiar with him and his work and his life. And it just took me a long time to bring it into the world. It took me, that was 2010 when all of that was happening, and it took me a long time to really make it work, to make it happen.
When did you sell the book? Like, when did you know it was going to become a book?
So there were a lot of different stages. The first, it took me a while to kind of, you know, making a new book, that it's always a little bit of a risk, you know, because you're making a book, you're writing a book that you're not getting paid for yet, you know. So I had all this paid contract work,
Mhm.
and to take on a project like that has no guarantee if it's going to get published, if I'm going to get paid for it, it was always a little daunting, and especially something I'd never done before. So it took me a number of years just to talking to nonfiction friends, nonfiction author friends, people that just kind of nudged me towards it. My wife Julie really was really encouraging, and eventually I wrote a manuscript, and I had it in my head, like one of my favorite editors I just think he does just really imaginative things with nonfiction picture books, especially picture book biographies. Neil Porter. And I'd worked with Neil before, but not as an author. I had it in my head like he was sort of the guy that I wanted to make this book with. So I wrote a manuscript. It was really long, and I knew that it wasn't ready, you know, in any way. But I sent it to him, and I said, you know, I'm working on this. I have this idea. I want to do a Mr. Rogers picture book. Can you just look at it and give me some advice? You know, I was trying to be slick, you know,
Yeah.
about it. And he looked at it, and he gave me some notes, some really helpful thoughts about it. And he was like, we were both kind of we were on the phone talking about it, and he was like, well, what do you want to do with it? You know? And I was like, well, I want to make a book. And he was like, well, do you want to do it together? You know? So that's how it sort of got started. And I think the contracts were made, I want to say around 2018 or 2019, somewhere around there. And then it, you know, there's a whole other part of the story. It's a really long, to me, fascinating story. But it took a lot of doing to make it to make this book be the authorized picture book biography, which means Fred Rogers Productions, the company that still acts and works in his name and his spirit, they hold the rights to all the characters, the names of everything, you know, song lyrics, everything, photographs, in a lot of ways, to Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. So, and you know, number one, I only wanted to do it sort of with their blessing and under with their cooperation, with their collaboration, and number two, I couldn't do it in the way that I wanted to, which was to talk in depth about the program, you know, the character names, how special they were, the different parts of the television program, all the detail that I want to include in this book. I wouldn't have been able to do it without them. So it took a little bit of time to make that happen, but it was almost like getting a whole new book deal by the time that worked out, because it was so exciting for me I was on the phone with them, just kind of explaining my intentions, and then by the end of the conversation, Kevin Morrison, who was the COO at the time, said, well, we're gonna do this book with you. You're the guy, you know, you're gonna be the guy. And it was like Christmas, you know. It was like Christmas morning to hear that from them. So yeah, it's been a long stretch, and it's really been probably one of the most rewarding, if not the most rewarding book that I've done so far.
Was it different at all drawing pictures, illustrating a book of like nonfiction than when you are making up the characters yourself and you can kind of do whatever you want a little more? Like, was that different what was that like?
Yeah, I feel, you know, with nonfiction, you can't just, I mean, I felt like there's a little bit more pressure, or at least different types of pressure.
I mean, because you're drawing all of the teacher's childhood heroes, and
yeah, exactly. And you have to represent someone that people have already seen, you know, in a book that you're writing and illustrating. And if it's fiction, you know, whatever you make is their vision of whatever that is. But in the case of Hello Neighbor, for the first time for me, I had to draw, you know, people and characters that existed in the world already, that people knew and loved. But I had to bring my style, my illustration style, to interpret these people and characters, and it had to work, you know. So it was kind of like solving a puzzle in a different type of way for me for the first time. But it was a lot of fun. It was really fun to kind of make it mine in a way, you know. And
yeah.
I never in a million years would have guessed that I would have been able to do that. You know, it was just, especially, you know, growing up, something that was such a big deal for me as a child, and it's a big deal to so many, to be able to leave my mark on that in some way. It was such an honor, you know. So it's just been, you know, a joy from the beginning, from once I got to start work on it.
Do you have a favorite Mr. Rogers episode or segment?
You know, there's like over 900.
I know. I did not know. When I read the book, I'm like, 900
yeah
episodes.
Yeah. I think I have favorite sort of parts, you know. I love
one favorite part.
I love, you know, this was the part that, you know, as a child, I loved a lot of these sort of more curious, creative parts of the program. I loved Picture, which is when they would have these like factory tours where they would watch on the little TV screen / painting on Mr. Rogers' the wall of his house. And I loved the Neighborhood of Make Believe, which is where all the puppets were and all the colorful set pieces. I think one of my favorite, I would say, like as an adult though, I think one of the things that I loved that I didn't know even existed until I started watching it again as an adult, is I loved watching a couple of my picture book heroes that were on the program. Eric Carle, Mr. Rogers went to Eric Carle's studio and they talked about picture books. They talked about how Eric Carle makes his pictures. And I just loved that so much. Actually, it's in the book. I loved it
Yep.
so much. And Ezra Jack Keats was on the show, on the program, I think maybe more than once, I think. So those, I love so much that some of my artistic heroes were actually part of that legacy as well.
Yeah, for me, and my favorite like little segment made it into the book. Something that I need to go back and watch on YouTube or somewhere or find. The Crayon Factory, like
Yeah, I love
that
that.
is so epic. Like that
Yeah,
is like as like a, you know, just a 10-year-old kid in a tiny town watching that, like
right.
it's just so, and I wish for more things like that in the world for kids to see all of the different jobs and the different things out there. Because I feel
Definitely. Yeah.
so often our kids just know like doctor, lawyer, factory worker, police officer, teacher, nurse, great
Right.
jobs. But I feel like they don't realize like someone makes the machine that makes crayons. Someone designs the crayons and the colors and the labels. And there's just such a big world out there. I think that I love that
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers was able to bring us into some of those places. That was pretty cool. So
Yeah. It's so satisfying too to watch, something that is so simple of an object, it's sort of an everyday object, and see it being made, um, mass produced, like the wax, and then the chopping up of the crayons and the different, is there something really soothing and satisfying about watching that, it's
but
fun.
there's so much of Mr. Rogers that he was ahead of his time. Like his
Mhm.
shows are like all could be like extremely huge YouTube channels. Like the different
Mhm.
segments like could be a YouTube channel in itself. So many of them. Like
Yeah.
he had it figured out. So I want to end with this, Matthew. I want to know something that you're reading, something that you're watching, something that you're listening to, a podcast, something that you're consuming right now. And I'll go first and give you a
Okay.
chance to think. So I just read right before this a 2020 picture book that I had been waiting to read until this week. And I did not want to read it because I did not want to just didn't want to jinx anything. I know that stuff is ridiculous, but I read Kate Messner and Adam Rex's The Next President,
Oh,
which
nice. I haven't
is
read that either.
it
I've
is an
seen the cover.
amazing picture book.
Cool.
And they've done this really cool thing where today they read it together, I don't like on Zoom or something, and they shared the screen and they edited the ending in their read aloud to include a little bit about Joe Biden and a little bit about the historical event of Kamala Harris being elected vice president. So that was a really cool
That's so
book, and I'm
cool.
excited to. And it's not like a partisan book, like it's not a book like teachers would have to worry about offending anyone reading in class. It truly is just the
Right.
history of the presidency. And
Mhm.
I'm very, very much looking forward to sharing with my kids this week. So how about you?
That's
What is
fun.
something that you are consuming?
I had a feeling you were going to ask me about books. So
Nice.
I have a little stack of books if I
Nice.
could.
What you got, Matthew? What do you got?
So these are some of my, I haven't, because it's been a strange year. I feel like I'm really behind on a lot of I love picture books so much, I'm usually devouring them from bookstores and our local library. But these are some of the favorites I've gotten, that I've
Okay.
gotten either from friends. This one I love, Talk Like a
Oh,
River, Jordan Scott,
yes.
Sydney Smith. One of my favorites. I love pretty much anything Sydney does. I hope he's not watching. I don't want him to know that. No, he's a great guy. But I love pretty much. He just has such a nice touch. I love his work so much. So, and this has been another favorite of mine,
Same.
Bear and the Moon. Also, another favorite picture book illustrator, Katja Chin, who seems to never disappoint in terms of books that of hers that I've seen. And the author is Matthew Burgess is his name. And I have another book that I think I believe he teaches in Brooklyn. I'm not sure if he
Okay.
teaches specifically picture book writing or maybe just creative writing. But I think he may have been a first time author with this book. I'm not positive about that, but this is a picture book biography about Keith Haring, the artist Keith Haring, drawing on walls, which is it's a fantastic book. I love Keith Haring, but this book was such a beautiful tribute to his life.
It
In
looks
terms
like
of
we just got a comment from your editor. He's going to sell you out there on your love for the creators. So sorry
I'm
about
sure Neil gonna sell me out. All right. So in terms of novels, my daughter is kind of like my biggest.
Oh, that's such a fun age.
She is like the biggest reader I've ever known. I mean, honestly, she just devours books of all kinds. So because she loves books so much, I always like to know what she's reading and what she's liking. She's read this book about 6-7 times.
Yes.
And so I just finished this. I love it. I love this book. It's a great, beautifully drawn, and also it's just a really sweet story, really touching story. And so I love that book now. And I'm going to be starting this book. I don't know anything about it.
Oh, that's always
I
fun.
haven't started it yet. I don't know.
Oh, Queen of the
I don't know what it's about.
Yeah, that
Romy,
one.
my daughter Romy has actually been sitting.
I've been sitting here for like
beside me this whole time. Why don't you come say hi to everybody while you're sitting over there? Just peeking. This is my daughter.
Hi.
This is my daughter Romy. Wait, he didn't see you.
Romy, you need to read this if you're into. This is so good. It's called Shark Summer.
Is that a graphic novel or is it? Okay, cool.
Are you a graphic novel fan? Is she graphic?
Come in. You can talk. Are you he said, are you a graphic novel fan?
Yes.
Okay, so this one, Romy, I just finished it today. It's so good. I will mail it to you. Have your dad email me your address, and I will, because it doesn't come out until May. So,
ooh, nice.
We'll get this in the mail to you as soon as you will like it. It's really fun. It's really
cool.
It's like you are the perfect age and perfect reader, and you will love this. And then you want to start a video club, and it's so good. Shark Summer. See, you came on the screen, you get a book.
Yeah, nice. Very cool.
Well, Matthew, thank you for your time. Thank you for creating amazing books for kids. It's
thank you.
It's really, really helpful to have your books. I'm still waiting for the moment to read Hello, Hello, which I still feel is like one of the just most perfect books to read aloud to fifth graders.
Nice, thank you.
And I need to buy a new copy because the case is just disheveled. And so, you know how that goes. So thank you for that. All of your books. We are very, very lucky to have you. And we look forward to the next nonfiction book and the Candace Fleming book and all of those books, Matthew. So
great.
Thank you
Thanks for
so
having
much.
Me, Colby.
And have a good night and stay safe, sir.
Thanks a lot. Everyone take care. Bye-bye.